There's a part on your outboard that costs about $40, takes maybe 30 minutes to swap, and most people never touch it for the entire life of the engine. When it fails, and it does fail, it can cook your motor from the inside until you're staring at a repair bill that runs into the thousands, or a brand new engine that costs 15 grand or more. It's the thermostat. Same basic idea as the one in your car. A little temperature-controlled valve. And on a boat, it's the difference between an engine that runs at the right temperature for 20 years and one that quietly destroys itself. Here's the kicker, and I'll give it to you straight up front so you can act on it today. The reason it catches people off guard is that it fails in two completely different ways, and one of them gives you almost no warning at all. By the end of this, you'll know both warning signs, how to test it yourself in about 10 minutes with a pot of water, and exactly when to replace it so you never have to find out what a melted power head costs. Let me show you why this little $40 valve has more power to save or sink your engine than almost anything else on it. Let me explain what this thing actually does, because once you get it, everything else makes sense. Your outboard pulls in cold water from the lake or the ocean to cool itself. That sounds great. More cooling is better, right? Except an engine that runs too cold is almost as bad as one that runs too hot. When a motor runs cold, the fuel doesn't burn cleanly. You get extra wear, carbon builds up, and you burn more gas for less power. So the engine needs to hold a specific temperature, usually right around 143 degrees on most outboards, to run its best. That's the thermostat's whole job. It's a small valve that stays closed while the engine warms up, holding the heat in, and then once the motor hits that target temperature, the thermostat opens and lets the cooling water flow through. When the engine cools a little, it closes back up. Open, closed, all day long, keeping your motor in that sweet spot. It's a simple part doing a critical job. And like anything that opens and closes thousands of times in salt water and grime, eventually it wears out or gets stuck. And how it gets stuck is where the real story is. Here's the part I promised you, the reason this catches good boat owners by surprise. The thermostat can fail two opposite ways, and they look nothing alike. The first way is the one that destroys engines. The thermostat gets stuck closed. Now the cooling water can't get through, even though the engine is screaming for it. The temperature inside those cylinders climbs fast, and I mean fast, a matter of minutes. This is the failure that warps your cylinder head, blows the head gasket, and in the worst case, scores the cylinder walls or seizes the pistons completely. That's not a repair anymore. That's a new power head, which is the entire top half of your engine. One marine guy with 15 years on the tools described exactly this: a thermostat that stuck and overheated a motor badly enough to damage the power head gaskets. Stuck closed is the killer. The second way is sneakier, and it's the one that drains your wallet slowly instead of all at once. The thermostat gets stuck open or just stops closing properly. Now the engine runs too cold all the time, and most people never even notice because there's no alarm, no steam, no drama. The motor just quietly runs rough, fouls its plugs, builds carbon, and drinks fuel. One owner with a Verado actually kept a logbook and measured it. His fuel use jumped 12 to 18% when his thermostat started failing open. Think about that. You could be paying 15% more at the pump for a year and blaming the gas prices, when it's a $40 part quietly costing you hundreds in wasted fuel. Stuck closed cooks the engine. Stuck open robs you slowly. Same little part, two totally different kinds of pain. So how do you catch it before either one gets you? That's the good news, and it's easier than you'd think. The first thing to know is the warning signs, because your engine usually tries to tell you before it lets go. For the stuck closed, dangerous failure, watch for the obvious stuff. A temperature alarm or warning light at the helm. Steam coming off the engine, an engine cover that's hotter than usual when you pop it. And pay special attention at idle and low speed, because that's when a struggling cooling system shows itself first, when the engine isn't moving much water. If you ever get an overheat alarm, shut it down right then. Do not try to limp it back at speed. The few minutes you'd save are not worth the power head you'd lose. I cannot say that strongly enough. The single most expensive mistake people make is hearing the alarm and deciding to push a little farther. For the stuck open sneaky failure, the signs are quieter. The engine feels rougher than it used to, especially at idle. It's slow to warm up or never quite seems to get there. Your fuel economy slips. The motor just feels a little off in a way you can't put your finger on. Most people ignore all of that for months because nothing's screaming at them. But if you've noticed your outboard running rough and drinking more gas than it should, the thermostat is one of the first cheap things to check before you go chasing expensive problems. Now here's the part that puts you in control. The test you can do yourself. You can test a thermostat at your kitchen counter with a pot of water, and it costs you nothing. This is the kind of thing a shop would charge you a diagnostic fee for, and you can do it in 10 minutes. Pull the thermostat out of the engine, which on most outboards is just a small cover held by 2 bolts near the top of the power head. Drop the thermostat in a pot of water on the stove with a cooking thermometer in it. As the water heats up toward that 143-degree mark, watch the thermostat. It should start to open up right around its rated temperature, and it should open smoothly and fully. Take it off the heat and let the water cool. And it should close back up. If it's stuck shut, stuck open, opening at the wrong temperature, or moving in a lazy, half-hearted way, it's bad, and you've just found a future engine killer for the price of boiling some water. Here's a tip that saves people grief. The bolts holding the thermostat cover live in salt water their whole life, and they can corrode and seize. So when you pull that cover, go gently. Spray the bolts with penetrating oil first and let it soak, because snapping a corroded bolt off in the power head turns a 30-minute job into a real headache. Take your time on the bolts, and the rest is easy. And honestly, here's the smartest move of all. Don't even bother testing an old one. The part is so cheap that if your engine has some years on it and you have no record of the thermostat ever being changed, just replace it. Which brings me to the numbers, because this is where you really see why this matters. Let me put the money side by side for you, because the math on this part is almost ridiculous. A new thermostat for most outboards costs somewhere between $25 and $50. Call it $40. The replacement kits usually come with the new gaskets you need, so that's your whole parts bill. If you do it yourself, that's the entire cost. If you'd rather have a shop do it, the labor is usually around an hour, and owners report paying somewhere around $100 for the job where the bolts cooperate. So worst case, parts and labor, you're maybe $150 all in. Now here's what it's protecting. When a stuck thermostat overheats your engine and damages the power head, you're not in $40 territory anymore. The parts kits alone to rebuild a V6 power head run $1,600 to nearly $2,000, just for the pistons, gaskets, and bearings, before anybody touches a wrench. Add the labor to actually do that rebuild and you're easily into several $1,000s. And if the overheat is bad enough that the block is cooked beyond saving, you're shopping for a new outboard. And a new mid-size to large outboard is $15,000 to $20,000 and up once it's rigged and installed. So look at the spread, $40 or up to $15,000 and beyond. There's not another part on your boat with a payoff ratio like that. Skipping a $40 thermostat to risk a $15,000 engine is like not changing the oil on a brand new truck. The part that saves you costs almost nothing, and the failure it prevents costs almost everything. So when should you actually replace it? Here's the simple rule. If you run in salt water, look at your thermostat every season and plan to replace it every couple of years no matter what, because salt and corrosion are brutal on that little valve and the spring inside it. If you run in fresh water, you've got more leeway, but every 3 years or so is cheap insurance. And a smart move a lot of experienced owners make is to do the thermostat at the same time as the water pump impeller, since both are cooling system parts and you've already got the engine torn into a bit. You bundle the 2 cheap jobs and knock out the 2 most common overheating causes at once. If you bought your boat used and there's no paperwork showing the thermostat was ever changed, just replace it now. Don't test it, don't wonder about it, don't wait for a sign. Assume it's original, assume it's tired, and spend the $40 for peace of mind. The previous owner almost certainly never touched it, because almost nobody does. And that's exactly why this part catches so many people. Now, let me be fair about the do-it-yourself question, because not everyone wants to pull parts off their engine, and that's completely fine. On a lot of outboards, especially smaller and mid-size ones, the thermostat is genuinely one of the easiest jobs there is. 2 bolts, a cover, swap the valve, new gasket, done. People with almost no mechanical experience do it in a driveway with basic hand tools. If that's your engine, it's a great first maintenance job to learn on. But I'll level with you. On some of the bigger modern engines, the thermostat is tucked under other components, and getting to it means removing things first, and the corroded bolt risk is real. If you're not comfortable or your engine makes it a fight, paying a shop $100 to do it is money well spent. The point isn't that you have to do it yourself. The point is that it has to get done by somebody on a schedule instead of being ignored for 15 years until it strands you or cooks your motor. Whether your own hands or a mechanic's hands do the work matters a lot less than just making sure it happens. So here's what I want you to take away from all this. The thermostat is the cheapest insurance policy on your entire engine. It's a $40 part that quietly holds your motor at the exact temperature it needs. And it fails in two ways, one that destroys the engine fast and one that bleeds your wallet slow. You can test it with a pot of water, you can often replace it yourself in half an hour, and you should be doing it every couple of years if you run in salt, every 3 or so in fresh. Most people will never touch this part. They'll change the oil, they'll fuss over the prop, they'll wax the hull, and they'll completely ignore the little valve that's quietly deciding whether their engine lives a long life or dies young. Don't be most people. The next time your boat's out of the water, pop that thermostat cover and have a look. $40 in a half an hour is the cheapest engine insurance you will ever buy. And the day your buddy's motor overheats on the water while yours runs cool, you'll know it was worth every cent and every minute.